There's nothing worse in fantasy football than wasting your top draft pick on a guy who completely busts. So today we're breaking down 7 overvalued players in fantasy football that you need to avoid, even if their names might be tempting. Now, these guys are being drafted way too high, and I'm going to show you exactly why, starting with Breece Hall, who, let's be clear here, right? Let's be clear. Breece Hall is an incredible talent. He's a very good running back. There's a reason why he's in the NFL and has had success in past years. But in fantasy, your past years don't pay the bills for what's upcoming this year in 2025. Like the fact that Breece Hall back in 2023 was the running back 6 in fantasy despite coming off of a torn ACL, and over the second half of the season, if we pull it up on RotoViz, in 2023, his breakout year, from week 5 on when he actually got the full workload, he was averaging 20 fantasy points a game. He was a top 3 running back. Between his receiving yards here, 42, his rushing yards of 60, this dude was averaging over 100 total yards per game, was one of the best running backs in fantasy, and that's why he was a top 5 fantasy pick in most drafts last year. During that time in 2023 when he broke out, his role was elite. He led all running backs in targets. He had 95. 5.6 per game. He had 13 carries per game. So overall, this guy was going out there in a bad Jets offense, mind you, behind a bad offensive line in that season, and he's putting up 19 overall opportunities per game. He was fantastic, one of the best pass-catching running backs and overall backs in football. But then 2024 came last year when he was a first-round pick in basically every single fantasy league, and his production dropped off a cliff. He fell to being the running back 17 in fantasy, despite still scoring a solid amount of touchdowns with 8, 15.1 points per game. Everything basically dropped for Hall. The efficiency took a hit with just 4 yards per carry. If we scroll all the way up here, right, he was getting almost 6 targets per game in 2023. His targets still remained high, 4.8 per game, but they did drop by about 1. 13.1 carries per game. Like a lot of overall touches per game stayed similar to his 2023 breakout season, but the problem was in general, the efficiency won, and there was an increase in his competition. Most notably from Braylon Allen, who was a 4th-round rookie. He was a beast. He was 6'1", 235 pounds. He was coming into the NFL draft at just like 19 and a half, 20 years old. In fact, this year, he just turned 21, entering his 2nd season in the league, which is pretty crazy because, I don't know, guys like Ray Davis are going to be turning like 25, 26, and they're entering their 2nd year. Braylon Allen is a young stud in terms of like dynasty leagues, somebody to definitely have on your team. And so when we look at Braylon Allen last year, he had a pretty decent role for being a late round, 4th round rookie in the NFL draft coming into the league. 92 carries, 27 targets. This was solid opportunity, but the thing is, he wasn't the only back involved. Like Braylon Allen is backing up Breece Hall, seeing 115 opportunities, but that wasn't it, because there was another rookie running back in this backfield last year, and Isaiah Davis, who was talented. He was a pass catcher. He was actually in college football the previous 2 seasons, the #1 graded rusher by PFF. Now, he didn't play in a Power 5 conference like the Big Ten or the SEC, but he was still highly efficient in college and productive, and that translated to the NFL enough to where he was out there often ahead of Breece Hall on 3rd downs, playing ahead of Braylon Allen on some early downs in the second half of games. So Isaiah Davis is a serious running back in terms of somebody to be worried about, not in terms of coming in and seeing, 70% of the snaps, but enough to see like 4 to 5 touches a game, which starts to add up. And you can see right here, Jets head coach Aaron Glenn, who is a new coach, which is always a concern when you have 3 talented running backs in your backfield to who is actually going to see a lot of the work. He talked about Breece Hall and his desire for a running back by committee with the Jets. He would then go on later into this and to say that they had 3 talented backs. They want to involve them all. And sometimes this is just coach speak. These things happen. They say they like all their running backs, but we just saw it last year with the Jets. They used all 3 of their running backs. And now 2 of those backs, in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, have another offseason. They aren't rookies anymore. They know what to expect heading into this year, which can only help them. And to make matters worse for Breece Hall, he also has to compete with Justin Fields, his new mobile quarterback who signed a 2-year deal this offseason to be the clear quarterback 1 for the Jets. And mobile quarterbacks, for the most part, are not good for the running backs, especially pass-catching running backs like Breece Hall, who ranked 3rd in targets last year amongst running backs. First the year before that. That's about to fall off a cliff with Justin Fields, because Fields is highly mobile. Remember 2022 when he broke out, had over 1,000 yards. He averaged 76 rushing yards per game, had 8 rushing touchdowns that season. Yeah, when you're taking off and scrambling, it means you're not checking down to your running backs as much like non-mobile quarterbacks would be doing. And also, when you're scoring 8 rushing touchdowns like he did the last time he was a full season starter in 2022, and you're scrolling over here and you're seeing 28 red zone carries, the 2nd most in the NFL. You know where these red zone carries are directly coming away from? They're directly coming away from your backfield. All 3 of these players, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, and most notably Breece Hall, the guy who is being still drafted right now early on in leagues. And if you make that pick, and some of these things we're talking about here do come true, multiple running backs involved, Justin Fields continues to take off and run, which he probably will, well, then there's a decent chance you're probably going to be regretting your pick of Breece Hall. And we actually have samples of what a Justin Fields running back looks like. Remember David Montgomery? He used to be on the Lions with Justin Fields back in 2022. If we pull up his stats from that year, we'll scroll down here. David Montgomery in that season, as the lead back for this team, only saw 2.5 targets per game. That's not great. Ranked just 19th in red zone touches because his quarterback had 28 red zone touches that year. David Montgomery ranked 19th in red zone touches. These past 2 years, he's been splitting a backfield in Detroit with Jahmyr Gibbs, a highly used running back, and David Montgomery is ranked higher in back-to-back years in a split backfield. And then there's Najee Harris, who we don't have much of a sample from 2024 because Justin Fields only started a handful of games, but over those games when Justin Fields started, Najee Harris to start the year, like that first 6-game stretch, had just one rushing touchdown. And during that time, Jalen Warren was also hurt. It was because Justin Fields was taking off and running. Then there's also some slight concerns, although maybe by the time you're watching this comes true, but I don't think this is actually going to come true. Breece Hall is potentially available for a trade. I think this was more likely before the NFL draft, but they do have a couple of talented running backs behind Breece Hall here. If they could recoup, I don't know, high draft capital for Breece Hall, maybe they do this deal. It is a new coaching staff, although I think it's unlikely. So if we just look at the average draft position as of this recording of Breece Hall, he goes as the running back 13 in drafts, the 33rd overall player. So he's going in the 3rd round of fantasy drafts, which isn't like super expensive, but just look at the players going around him. At the exact same positions here, the running back position, give me Chase Brown. Later on in the drafts, definitely give me Joe Mixon. For sure, I'd rather have Kenneth Walker and Chuba Hubbard, who go at pick 49 and 53, 20 picks later than Breece Hall, even though they have less competition in their backfield compared to Breece Hall. They're not going to be dealing with a super mobile rushing quarterback. So yeah, I think right now Breece Hall would be an overvalued mistake to take. And I could say similar things for the RB1 at least last year for the Buffalo Bills, and that's James Cook, who, don't get me wrong, James Cook last year, if we scroll down to it, this dude was a touchdown machine. Let's look at this right here. He had 18 touchdowns last year. He was used much more in the red zone than he was in a previous season, and that altogether allowed him to finish as the RB1, the running back 11 overall in fantasy in points per game. But here's the problem. Overall, his usage was meh. Now you might be saying that's crazy, Sal. He was just a top 12 running back. He had 18 touchdowns. Yes, he had some touchdown luck. In fact, James Cook last year was the luckiest running back in terms of touchdowns. He was only expected to score about 8 touchdowns. He scored 18. So running backs in his situation would have scored 8. He scored 10 more. That's an outlier. That's not sustainable. And then you look at his actual usage. He ranked 32nd in running back targets, 19th in carries. When you take those two things together and you look at James Cook's total touches last year, he wasn't even a top 25 running backs. His 18 touchdowns, those 18 touchdowns propelled him up to being a top 12 back. Without them, he's not even a top 24 back. And then you might look at it and go like, okay, well, the Bills had 9 draft picks, didn't draft the running back, but they didn't have to draft the running back. They had Ty Johnson. They brought him back this year. He plays a specific role in this offense. And Ray Davis was a rookie last year and absolutely stood out. And it wasn't just the game when James Cook missed in prime time. I think it was a Thursday night game, and Ray Davis on limited touches went off for like 120 yards. It wasn't just that game. Because if you just watch Ray Davis's film, this dude was constantly, he was like a Bucky Irving light, constantly breaking tackles, getting extra yards. He showed clear explosiveness. So yeah, I don't think Buffalo felt the need to draft anybody. I think Ray Davis is a legit running back. I think he's a sleeper, a late round pick in fantasy for sure, who can be much more involved, especially in the red zone this year, compared to James Cook. Especially if James Cook continues to do stuff like this. On his first day of voluntary OTAs, every single Bills healthy starter was there, except for running back James Cook, who all offseason has been asking for a new extension, even though his contract is not currently up all offseason. And it makes sense. Like, go and try and get your bag, right? You just scored 18 touchdowns. You had a solid year. Your team made a playoff run. Like, go and try and get your bag while you can. But if this continues to happen, and maybe he starts to show up to OTAs, and just based on how contracts and right now collective bargaining is set up, you basically, if you're a player, can't sit out. Like, you just lose so much money, like even more than usual. You can't sit out. So I don't think James Cook is going to hold that or anything like that. But this could sour. Like, this can just make the team go like, okay, if you're just going to be doing this like before your contract's up, we'll give more touches to maybe the similarly or more talented back in Ray Davis. So now with all that said, James Cook, and by the way, Josh Allen is still going to be running the ball, which doesn't help James Cook's targets or his red zone touches. He's going as the RB14, the 37th overall player. This is crazy. Look who's going around him across different positions. Devontae Adams, all day give me Devontae Adams over him. Mike Evans, all day give me Mike Evans. Rashee Rice, all day give me Rashee Rice. All the elite quarterbacks and like Jalen Hurts and even Jaden Daniels are in this range. You could even scroll like 10 to 15 to 20 picks later. There's Kenneth Walker, Tet McMillan, Chuba Hubbard. I want all these guys before James Cook. James Cook is a 3rd round pick right now. In my opinion, should probably be closer to like a late 4th round, early 5th round pick. Now let's discuss another running back in Alvin Kamara. And here's the thing. Alvin Kamara's usage in 2024, it was great. Like, he had a massive role. If we just scroll down to some of the stuff that this guy was doing in terms of overall opportunities, he led all running backs last year with 89 targets. He had 228 carries. So between his carries and his targets, this was the most volume we've ever seen Alvin Kamara have. The most touches that he's had in a season despite turning 30 years old. And once again, Alvin Kamara finishes as a top 5 running back. Year in and year out, you're getting a top 12 finish from him. He was the RB3 the year before that, RB5 this past year. So you might be saying, I mean, he's been so consistent, Sal. Why are we not liking him or saying that he's overvalued right now in drafts? Well, the problem is a couple of things. First off, and we're going to get into all of them, he is an aging running back. And as you hit 30 years old, your efficiency starts to drop. You pick up more injuries. And we already saw that efficiency drop off a cliff last year. He ranked just 35th in rushing efficiency, and he was outside the top 40 backs in broken tackles, yards after contact, and drop rate. And like I said, now he's 30 plus years old and he's in arguably the worst offense in the NFL when you take together just their overall offensive environment. You look at the offensive line, not great. The quarterback situation, not great. This offseason, he just lost Derek Carr, the veteran quarterback, who maybe was going to give this offense some stability, even behind a bad offensive line. So now the quarterback's either going to be Tyler Shaw, a second-round pick, or most likely a camp battle between him and Spencer Rattler. And we already saw how that went last year for Rattler. It's hard to really blame him. He got thrown into games in a bad situation, but he didn't really elevate the offense. Now, Kamara did play 4 games with Spencer Rattler last year, and he averaged about 15 fantasy points per game, which is like a top 12 finish, but he did a lot of that based on some spike performances in the passing game. Maybe he could do that again, but that's hard to rely on. In those games, he didn't get a lot of volume on the ground. And the environment has now changed. Not only a potential new quarterback in Tyler Shaw coming in and taking over a rookie, but you also have Kellen Moore coming in here as a coach. He's going to be calling this offense. And here's the thing. This is something that's very interesting. Kamara needs production in the passing attack. According to PFF, Kellen Moore's recent coaching history, running backs just don't get targeted all that much. The running back target rate is right here, 14.8%, 14.5%, 15.9%. And this is with some very good overall running backs. I mean, heck, Kellen Moore was just having Saquon Barkley in his offense last year. Those target rates are much lower than what Kamara has seen lately. Kamara's usually in the 20% range. If that starts to drop based on how Kellen Moore runs his offenses, it's going to directly hurt how Kamara gets his production. Now, of course, there are clear counterpoints to that. Like Saquon was in an offense with a mobile quarterback who doesn't check down the ball as much last year with Kellen Moore. Alvin Kamara, maybe Kellen Moore builds his offense around him, which is a possibility, but I'm just not certain that happens. And the other piece that we already touched on, the Saints offensive line last year ranked dead last in the NFL. This offseason, there's not like much that really happened that makes me that much confident if we go to their team changes. First round pick of Kelvin Banks, of course, that's their big move that they made. But outside of that, like their free agency moves with Will Clapp, Dylan Randons, none of these make me all too confident, especially when you're losing Lucas Patrick and recently in different years players to retirement and injuries. Like offensive line's still going to be bad. Quarterback situation still murky. Overall offense, very not great. Very not great is a weird way to say it, but just not good. And for what it's worth, that age of 30 years old matters. Kamara's missed 7 games over the past 2 years. Despite this, he goes as a top 50 player, the running back 17 in drafts. Let's just look at guys who go after him. I want Kenneth Walker. I want Tet McMillan. I want Chuba Hubbard, some of the names we've been saying. I want Travion Henderson, who goes much after. James Conner at this point I want over him. Like, we can keep scrolling here. I want David Montgomery over him, goes 15, 20 picks later. Like, it's pretty crazy. If you keep scrolling, even Calvin Ridley and Juwan Jennings for the value rounds later, I'd rather have those guys who could be potential ones in their offenses right now at the wide receiver position rather than Alvin Kamara, who's in a terrible situation and an aging back. So yes, at his current price of like a 4th round pick, I do think drafting Alvin Kamara is a mistake. And also, if you want to avoid the 5 most common mistakes I see in fantasy drafts every single year, I built a free 5-day email course that you can get. It's linked in the description below, or you can just head to startwinningfantasyfootball.com, all one word, startwinningfantasyfootball.com, and you can get your free 5-day course right now so you can actually start winning your leagues while your friends make those same mistakes. And if you would like to go even deeper and have me help you with your draft and your league every single week of the year for your matchups, well, you can check out the Fantasy Blueprint. It's available right now. It has all the tools, analysis, and access to me for questions that I use every single year. You can just head to thefantasyblueprint.com. That is thefantasyblueprint.com. It's one word. Also linked in the description below. You can join about 10,000 other people who have used the blueprint to win more. Let's get away from the running back position and talk about the wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, the 31-year-old Miami Dolphins wide receiver. Look, this guy, of course, he was electric in past years. You scroll down to what this guy was doing back in 2022 and 2023, and here you get the wide receiver 3 overall, the wide receiver 2 overall. Arguably in this year, he was the number 1 overall pick in fantasy, and he ends up producing 23.5 points, one of the best wide receiver seasons we've ever seen. But in 2024, it was a total collapse. He finishes the wide receiver 29 in fantasy. He had less than 1,000 yards, and his target share fell off a cliff. And to make matters worse, according to RotoViz, if you look right here, in his 6 games without Tua last year, he wasn't even averaging 9 fantasy points per game. He was averaging just 44 receiving yards per game. But even when Tua was healthy, you were still getting just 63 receiving yards per game out of Tyreek. Not what you're used to getting out of this guy. And if you think about those games without Tua last year, where he had just 8.9 fantasy points per game, that was worse production than Demario Douglas, a Patriot slot receiver, Alec Pierce, the wide receiver 3 or 4 for the Colts, and Anthony Richardson last year, and then also Jalen Tolbert, the Cowboys like number 2 or 3. That's how bad it was for Tyreek Hill, and a lot of it has to do with just, his own injuries, Tua's injuries, the offense in general. He's aging, but look at this. He averages 7.9 yards per target, 64th in the NFL, 11.8 yards per reception, 66th in the NFL. Part of this is because there's bad backup quarterbacks in there who couldn't throw downfield, but the other piece of it, defenses are just starting to play only cover 2 against the Miami Dolphins, which means you're not going to throw it deep on us, so now you're getting short passes to Tyreek, and now that he's getting older, it's harder for him to break tackles and extend those plays, and he's just not producing like he once was. And here's the problem. Here's like the real nasty part about this is Tyreek is not getting any younger. He's now 31 years old. So this is the exact point that we usually see these wide receivers, the Andre Johnsons, the Julio Jones in their prime just start to fall off a cliff in some ways, and that's a concern. You add in the age, the season that he had last year, the offense is seeing more cover two and to his injuries, and Mike McDaniel potentially being on the hot seat if the season doesn't start off well. There's just a lot of red flags here. And then there's some of Tyreek's off the field issues and antics that are a problem as well. At the end of last year, remember the infamous "I'm out, bro." Now recently he came out and he talked on this and he said he wants to put that all behind him, but this is just a guy that outwardly will speak out or maybe not even show up for his team at times. Like he did at times last year, where you can see right here, Tyreek Hill said that he was unavailable in the fourth quarter of a game last year. Now again, some of this has come out since then and he's saying like, okay, it was injury related. Now some people are just saying it wasn't, and that's sort of what the Miami Dolphins coaching staff was saying, but all these things are just antics that aren't great. We've had multiple times this offseason that there could potentially be a trade for Tyreek. Maybe by the time you're watching this, there's a crazy trade that happens. Again, it's really hard to get trades done for star players. They happened. It's happened to Tyreek in the past as well, going from the Chiefs to the Dolphins, but it's just hard for that to happen. But the fact that there's rumors out there, maybe there's some smoke. So right now, Tyreek, despite a lot of these concerns, is going as the wide receiver 15 in drafts. I often see him go as early as like the wide receiver 10, the top of the second round because of that name value, I think. 30th overall player, so he's often a second or a third round pick, which means he's going ahead of Chase Brown, Jaden Daniels, Devontae Adams. All of these, in my opinion, would be mistakes. I think Tyreek Hill, of course, we know he has the mega upside, but I think that upside is now gone and behind him. Similar things can be said for Baker Mayfield, who's coming off of a career year. I mean, let's just look at what Baker Mayfield did last year. Every single thing this guy did was a career high. His pass attempts, career high. His passing yards, 4,500. He looked great out there as well. Completion percentage, by far a career high, 71%. Yards per attempt, 7.9. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. Even the rushing yards were a career high. 41 passing touchdowns. All that ended up making Baker Mayfield the quarterback 4 in fantasy, 22.5 fantasy points per game. But if you look at what he's done before that, the quarterback 33, of course, in a split offense. Last year, though, the year before that in 2023 when he was a starter, quarterback 17, right? So this spike in passing touchdowns is what really helped him. And now he loses his offensive coordinator in Liam Cohn. And now Baker Mayfield comes into a season where his best wide receiver is a 32-year-old Mike Evans, who has always obviously been great, but eventually it's going to fall off for Mike Evans, especially as he's now 32. And Chris Godwin is coming off of a serious injury. And last year, Chris Godwin was a major part of the first half of the season success for Baker Mayfield, and now he's going to be coming into the year potentially not his full self. And now, of course, Baker was a top 5 quarterback last year. That was great, but we might look back on that as the best season of his career because previous to this, in his completed seasons, Baker was the quarterback 17, the quarterback 18, and the quarterback 27. And he was a top 3 quarterback last year in terms of his passing TD rate, which usually regresses, in his overall passing touchdowns. Now, here's an interesting stat about that overall passing touchdowns, right? His 41 passing touchdowns, as you can see right here. Basically, over the past decade, quarterbacks that have finished in the top 3 in passing touchdowns, only 2 of them have repeated that the following year. And those quarterbacks were Tom Brady and Russell Wilson. So again, it does happen, but it's really unlikely. It happens like less than 10% of the time. So now let's say that Baker Mayfield goes from throwing 41 passing touchdowns, right? New offensive coordinator, aging wide receivers, and it drops down closer to this 28 or 30. He's probably going from the quarterback 4 closer to the quarterback 17, maybe even the quarterback 12 or 15. Because there's not a lot of outs to his game. He's not a mobile quarterback. Sure, he ran for 22 yards per game. That was basically average. It's average in these days in the NFL. 15th overall amongst quarterbacks. There's 32 teams in the NFL, basically average. 3 rushing touchdowns, 12th. Okay, so basically average once again. He's not really lighting it up on the ground. He will take off and run. He might get you a 12-yard run in a game or so here or there, but he's not going to be the guy going out there and consistently putting up 40 yards, putting up 7 to 10 rushing touchdowns. And the new offensive coordinator this offseason, if you can see this quote right here, he's basically said, like, I would like Baker early in the game. If you look right here, he says, early in the game, if it's not there, I would prefer for him to throw it away or get down or check it down and add to a punt. So these types of things right here, if you look at that quote, he's basically just saying, like, I want it to be a little bit more composed, which leads to less mistakes, but it also leads to less of these crazy Baker Mayfield type plays on extended plays and him running for 15-yard gains that we've accustomed to seeing, especially last year. We could boil this down to Baker Mayfield had the best finish of his career last year at the quarterback 4, and a lot of things have changed, and they'll just be natural regression. Despite this, he now goes as the quarterback 7 in drafts. I mean, he's currently going right in that tier right now of like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, the mobile elite quarterbacks, right? Like he's going one tier below the Jalen Allen or the Jalen Hurts and the Lamar Jacksons, which is just crazy. Right now, based on where Baker Mayfield goes, if you look at the quarterbacks who all go after him, Bo Nix, I'd rather have Bo Nix for one-on-one, let alone a cheaper price point. Kyler Murray, give me Kyler. Give me Caleb Williams. Give me Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, all these guys. Even Dak Prescott, who goes way later. We're talking like 40 picks later. I want all those guys 1-for-1 over Baker Mayfield, let alone getting a 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 round discount. Now let's discuss the tight end position, and we have to talk about Sam Laporta here because this guy was incredible in his rookie season. If you remember that rookie season, I mean, it was like historic. He was the tight end 3 in fantasy points per game, despite not starting the season as a full-time tight end. 14 fantasy points per game. He was propelled up by 10 10 receiving touchdowns, but it wasn't just like fluky, right? Because he actually put up legit target volume. He had 120 targets as a rookie, but the problem was in his second year, this dropped to just 83. He saw less touchdowns, which you might expect. It's hard to repeat 10 touchdowns every year of your career, but he saw much less touchdowns. He saw much less target volume. He just wasn't as involved in the offense in year 2. And now the problem is he's losing Ben Johnson, his offensive coordinator, who has been responsible for awesome tight end seasons like TJ Hawkinson in the past and Sam Laporta's tight end 3 year in his rookie season. And last year, if anything was clear, it was the fact that Jameson Williams actually took a step forward. We know Amon-Ra St. Brown's the number 1 in this offense. We know that Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the number 2 overall piece of this offense. Jameson Williams started to become, and he's getting even more hype this offseason by the coaching staffs, he started to become a priority. So if he's the 3rd option, now you're looking at best, and don't forget like David Montgomery's still here, at best the 4th option in this overall offense is going to be Sam Laporta. That wasn't the case in his rookie season when he looked like a clear-cut number 2 option, so that is a concern. And when you look at the offseason changes to this team right now, they did bring in Isaac Tesla, who they traded up a bunch of capital for, a 3rd-round wide receiver right here, so maybe he actually starts to get a little bit more run, him or Tim Patrick, the wide receiver 3 in this offense. And if that's the case, it's even more targets, even if it's just like 1 target a game. That's 10 less targets, 15 less targets on the entire season that Sam Laporta might earn. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Sam Laporta is still talented. He's in a very good offense that should get to the red zone a lot, but I just can't take him as the tight end 4. He's currently going as the tight end 4, the 59th overall player. Like, compared to other players across different positions, yes, I want Travis Hunter. Yes, I want his teammate David Montgomery, who seems like a shoo-in for nearly double-digit touchdowns if he stays healthy. You can keep scrolling to where the next tight end comes off the board like 20 picks later. It's TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I don't really want Hawkinson this year, but 20 picks later, sure. Let's scroll to the next tight end. Travis Kelce's 30 picks later. All the way down here is Jonnu Smith, who was a beast, a top 5 tight end the second half of the season last year, and he's currently going 40 picks later than TJ Hawkinson. You could even wait longer in drafts. And guys like Evan Ingram, 1 for 1 next to Sam Laporta. I would much rather have an Evan Ingram than a Sam Laporta, especially with like a 60 pick difference. Now let's get back to Tyron Tracy. Let's get back to the running back position, I should say, with Tyron Tracy, the Giants rookie from last year, converted wide receiver in college. He's going to be 26 years old when the season starts, which is just crazy, but that's not even like the red flag that I'm concerned about. Let's get into this. And by the way, I say 26 years old is crazy, not because that age is high. I mean, I'm 28, 29. That makes me look like an old man. No. It's because he's entering his second year in the NFL and he's already 26. Earlier, we talked about Braylon Allen, just turned 21 entering his second year. It's just a wide difference. So that's why I consider that crazy. But Tyron Tracy was good. Like, he didn't even have the full starting job until midseason. And despite that, over 800 rushing yards, nearly 300 receiving yards. In total, he had over 1,100 total yards and 6 touchdowns, despite not getting going until midseason. And he was clearly, if you watched his film, when he had the ball in his hand, especially in open space, he was very explosive. He was a playmaker. And he basically did it off the rip. Like the first game when Devin Singletary was hurt and Tyron Tracy got extended work in a prime time, either Sunday or Monday night game. I remember getting back from a flight and just seeing him go off. 18 carries, 129 yards, 7 yards per attempt. That's just what he did on the ground. He ends up adding a reception in this game as well. He did a lot of stuff in the open field. He did a lot of stuff as a pass protector in that game, which he wasn't known for as a converted wide receiver to running back entering the NFL in his final year at Purdue. So he kind of came out of a cannon, was highly efficient, and a lot of people remember that game because it was on prime time. And after that game, he had a couple of other big performances, but overall, the offensive environment wasn't great. His explosive run rate was just 31st in terms of 10-plus yard gains. His juke rate for breaking tackles just 27, so he wasn't breaking tackles. He wasn't creating explosive plays. He had some fumbling issues. He lost 2 fumbles. He actually fumbled the ball even more, but was able to obtain at the Giants offense. So these are some of the red flags that the Giants saw, which prompted them to end up adding to their running back room with a 4th rounder in Cam Scadaboo, a guy who in college had 1,700 rushing yards last year, 600 receiving yards. He was a beast. And by the way, this team doesn't have just Cam Scadaboo, who, let's see what he does in this offense, right? They still have Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary, who, assuming he makes the team, is a veteran that they liked enough to become like the RB1 in this offense before he got hurt last year, the first half of the season. Not to mention, like I said, Tyron Tracy is turning 26 years old this year, which doesn't mean anything. Like, he has just 1 year of NFL run under him, but he is like not a 23-year-old in his prime. He's 26, edging towards like the middle to end of his prime based on running back years. At the end of the day, I think Tyron Tracy is talented. I wouldn't be shocked if he does more this year, but the problem is he's being drafted like it. He's going as the running back 28 in drafts, 80th overall. Compared to some of the guys who go after him, Jacoby Myers goes after him, the wide receiver 1 for an improved Raiders offense. Jaden Reed, probably the wide receiver 1 for a Green Bay offense. You can keep scrolling. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco goes even after him right here, like a round or 2 later. Keep scrolling all the way down, and I think you find even better options like a Brian Robinson. His own teammate goes like 30 picks later than him, and Cam Scadaboo. So I just think there's a lot of other options. Like Tyron Tracy, what's the best case scenario you get? What you got last year out of him, like 1,000 total yards, not a ton of passing game usage, not a ton of touchdowns, and a split backfield. I'd rather just take my chances on somebody who could break out. So these are 7 overvalued players that I think you should avoid in drafts this year. You don't want to be chasing the name value from previous seasons or the breakout from last year who's in a totally different situation now. Instead, you should be targeting the guys who can actually win you your league. And that's exactly what these 5 wide receivers in this video, the must-have wide receivers for 2025, will do. Be sure to check it out. I think it's going to help you a ton.